Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast. My name is JT Olson. With me, as always, is our host, Garrett Ballard. Garrett, how are you today?
I'm doing well, JT. Draft week is here. I'm excited. I know all the Bucs fans are excited. Just about every fan of an NFL team is going to be excited. So stoked to get this one going.
Yeah, me too, because we have our first ever guest on the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast, one Collin Haalboom. We just went over how to say his name. I instantly tripped on it. Collin, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
It's our pleasure. We are super excited to have you on. One, because you do great work. I've been reading your articles for a little while now, and I've been following your podcast, Bucs Banter, for probably as long as I've been working at Bucs Report. That's kind of how I got linked to your work there. And then I was super excited to see you get the new job with Sports Illustrated. How's that going so far?
Yeah, first of all, thanks very much. I really appreciate that, JT. You do good work yourself over at Bucs Report, man. I've seen a lot of your work also, so certainly appreciate the shout out. And sorry, in terms of SI, it's going great, man. I'm really enjoying it. It's very busy, similar to yourself. I got a couple young kids. I do have a real job, I'll call it. So time is tight, but there's nothing I'd rather do with my spare time than cover the Buccaneers and the NFL draft. And doing so for a credible brand like Sports Illustrated has been a really nice breath of fresh air for me personally. So I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Yeah, it's super exciting opportunity. I know David Harrison from the Locked On Bucs podcast and formerly of Bucs Nation went over there at the same time you did. So, it's a headliner right there to be kind of going in with you and kind of your inaugural class. So it's a big company you're kind of associated with.
Yeah, it's great getting to know David better and getting to see how he works firsthand. He does great work. I've always followed his work, and I've already learned a lot from him.
Well, there's one thing I want to learn before we jump too much into the content here. On Twitter, it says you live in Canada. Is that where are you Canadian?
I am Canadian, boys. I'm in Canada. I'm watching my Raptors. This is how much I appreciate you guys. The Raptors are in a playoff game right now, and I'm also a big basketball guy, but I still chose to be here with you on the Creamsicle Chronicles.
Man, look at that.
We appreciate that.
I'm about 40 minutes west of Toronto.
I'm going to try not to hold your Raptors fandom against you in this moment because I'm super bitter about the whole Rookie of the Year situation.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I opted to take the diplomatic approach and not respond just because I try to keep my football takes there at Bucs Banter on Twitter.
So let me ask you this, because I'm always interested to meet Bucs fans who are further north than I am. How did you start following this team? What linked you up with the Bucs? Because, I know we of a certain age couldn't stream games when we were growing up. We had to watch it on the boob tube.
Yeah, for sure. I was probably about 10 years old, so it would have been 97, the first year that the Bucs unveiled the pewter and red color scheme. So when they went away from your beloved Creamsicles, I would have been about 10 years old. My grandfather, who was what we call a snowbird, I don't know if that's just a Canadian term or if that's a well understood phrase, but he owned a condo in Florida, Sarasota area, and he'd live there half the year, go golfing, and he became a Bucs fan. And naturally, as a 10-year-old kid, I've always been drawn to sports, in an obsessive way, really, since a kid, probably similar to you guys. And watching games with him, whether I was down there or because it would be over a portion of the football season, or catching them, on Fox and when they'd make the games on the cable network. So I just started following the team then, man. Like, fell in love with Warwick Dunn and definitely not Trent Dilfer, but Tony Dungy. My grandpa was a huge Tony Dungy guy. He thought he was a class act, and that's one of the things. He liked the new uniforms. He liked Tony Dungy. Probably didn't follow the sport as thoroughly as any of us three, but it certainly paved the way for what I didn't know would become a lifetime of closely following the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from the chilly confines of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Yeah, we never choose this path, especially during the dark years after 2007. But it's love, and you can't pick who you love, and we just happen to love the Bucs.
Very true.
Well said.
Very much so.
So let's talk some Bucs here. I know we could probably talk all day, but we have a draft coming this week, and it's kind of a big deal. I don't know if you guys have heard about it.
A little bit.
So before the show, we ran through our own personal mock drafts. We each did a mock draft, a 7-round Bucs mock draft, what we think / what we kind of anticipate want the picks to be. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to run through each of our 3 individual mock draft and kind of compare and contrast, see if we're like-minded, see where we're different. And Colin, I want to kick it to you first as the guest of honor. Do you have your draft up, or do you have it?
I jotted the picks down here, so I have them. I did mine through Pro Football Focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at 27, based on how the board fell, I went with Daxton Hill, a player I have openly discussed my affection for as just an all-around football player. The cliche term Swiss Army knife certainly applies to him and his versatility in the secondary. And I think lots of chatter about the Buccaneers being interested in adding someone to their secondary. Lots of talk about safety. I think you got to be realistic and think that a corner is also on the board as a potential option. But why not solve both with one issue? And that's how versatile I believe Daxton Hill is. And, lots of talk of like Lewis Seen and more of that like strong safety mold that Todd Bowles would covet. But I personally, because, I've got my own mock coming out probably tomorrow. I've done a number of mocks, and I haven't had the chance to put Daxton Hill's name there. So this was a great opportunity to do so. Love the player. And I'd be really excited about adding him and seeing what Todd Bowles could do when he gets his hands on someone like Daxton Hill. He played more nickel than he did safety at Michigan. So that's, in my opinion, a need for us. Like Sean Murphy-Bunting has shown a propensity to create splash plays in big moments. And I believe you could argue that that's even potentially inflated his value amongst the average Bucs fans. I'm much more of a Jamel Dean guy if you had to pit them against each other. But the point is, aside from Antoine Winfield Jr. and Carlton Davis, every member of that secondary is an impending free agent after this season. I think it would be wise for Jason Light to look forward and consider his options. He's not going to bring all those guys back, and you don't want to have a rookie have to step into a huge role right away. So that's really my logic for the selection of Daxton Hill here, and, of course, in addition to how the board fell for me.
You are preaching to the choir. We both are huge fans of Dax Hill.
Nice.
We both, pretty much all the reasons you said, think he's just a great all-around football player. So I don't think either of us will have any complaints about that pick.
He's athletic enough. He could even play corner if you needed him to. Like, he's that good. I keep referring to him as a defensive back extraordinaire. And, that stems from his versatility and all of his skills and IQ. He's got it all, man. I love him.
It's great. That's really a good way to put it. And like you said, put him in the nickel. I think even though he didn't really play it a ton, I think he can really drop back a bit, play some safety. He has the athleticism. I think he has the intelligence to do that pretty easily, to be honest. So
you approve. That's excellent.
Very much so.
Do you guys want me to? Are we going like pick each of our first round pick, or do you want me to run through my whole 7 rounds here?
Let's go straight through, and we'll kind of get a totality of it at the end.
Okay, so you want me to keep going?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at 60, I was pleased to see Trey McBride still on the board. The tight end class, I'm sure you guys have discussed it quite a bit, just based on that being such a glaring need for the Buccaneers, whether or not Bucs fans are treated to another year of the Gronk show. I think maybe Trey McBride's the number 1 guy on their board. Maybe he isn't. To me, he's the number 1 guy on my board. I think his combination of being a dynamic enough athlete, but just a good pass catcher is crucial. But he's got to be able to block, and he's shown the ability to do that. And I think he's shown, more importantly, the potential to be able to block at the NFL level. Cam Brate is in for a big role this year if Rob Gronkowski doesn't return. Regardless, he's probably in for a big role. And Cam Brate is just not a good enough blocker, in my opinion, especially with the offense that Leftwich and Arians like to run. It is, it does require your tight ends to be able to block, right? So I think McBride would be if he slips to 60, I think that's his sweet spot, man. I would say that's the floor for him in terms of where he's going to get picked. I have trouble believing that he would be there when it comes down to it, because I think you got some teams like the Titans, the Chiefs, who picked before them, who are going to be equally as interested in drafting a tight end. But again, the position has good depth. At least like there's probably 5 names who you could argue are all in like a comparable tier, depending how they stack up. Guys like Ruckert and Dulcich and Jelani Woods and Cade Otton out of Washington. So number of guys. Trey McBride out of Colorado State is who I took with the 60th pick. So we've addressed tight end and safety / DB. And round 3, pick 91, unless you guys want to chime in on McBride at all.
I think Garrett and I both agree. Trey McBride is our tight end 1.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
He's the best in this class. He totaled over 1,000 receiving yards last year, and that tells you what kind of a weapon he is at Colorado State. Only 1 touchdown, but I mean, that's kind of an abnormality. I mean, that's just kind of one of those luck of the draw kind of things. Stopped at the 1. I know Calvin Johnson was stopped at the 1-yard line 5 times the year he went for 2,000 yards. So these things happen. I'm not too worried about that. I think he'd be a great addition.
One thing I do want to say real quick is it's funny, like in my opinion, just from everything I've seen, if the board falls a certain way, I think McBride's ceiling is 27. I think if all the guys that like, they were like, okay.
Through this, Garrett?
We got a frozen Garrett.
Am I here?
Oh, he's back.
Hello?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, goodness. Sorry about that. I was just saying, I think way. I think if like you saying the safeties aren't there, the D line isn't there, they might just pull the trigger at 27 for McBride.
I wouldn't rule it out. And the one thing you got to give Jason Light, a lot of GMs like to claim they're this way. He truly goes by, the board that he's created alongside his player personnel department, led by like John Spytek and some of his most trusted scouts, guys he is always praising for their work. And they go by their own board, man. Like Sean Murphy-Bunting was off the board. Jamel Dean was an interesting pick. Carlton Davis in the 2nd round. Like these are all names that at the time you're kind of like, huh. Like it wasn't necessarily what people in the media like us were projecting. So I agree he would have the confidence and be, especially because he's got to have a better beat on what's happening with Gronk, man. Things have been so quiet with Gronk.
Yeah.
Could mean he's confident he's coming back. Could mean he believes he's not going to come back. I expect him to come back. Like I don't think that's just the fact that I root for the Buccaneers bias. I think he probably will, or he would have let him know by now, I think. But either way, you got to bring some young legs into that position. I think the ceiling would be the Titans, the pick right before us at 26. They're in dire need for a tight end. So I could see them potentially doing that, but they also have major issues on the offensive line.
Yeah.
So round 3, obviously no D tackle, no interior defensive lineman's been taken yet. So that needs to be addressed. And Matthew Butler out of Tennessee, pick 91 is who I took. Bit more of a project. This would certainly accompany an Ndamukong Suh coming back to Tampa. Then it would really make me more excited, because you don't want to have to thrust Matthew Butler into a role he's not ready for. He's going to require some refinement. He's going to need to be coached up, and who better to learn from than guys like William Golston, Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, and Shaq Barrett, right? So Butler's got tons of natural ability and could potentially be a really valuable selection at that point of the draft. He's not a Devante Wyatt, but he's a guy they could use. And I think in the 3rd round, that's like solid value. Not bad.
Yeah, that was definitely a name that I talked about last week. So,
yeah right on. And like, the defensive tackle class is not in totality is nothing super impressive. So if you can get a guy with the tools that Butler has with the 91st pick, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Round 4, 133. I keep ending up taking them in these damn mock drafts when I do these 7-rounders, because I just think the value, maybe it's PFF where it's been happening. It's hard to keep track of which simulators I've been using. I try to mix it up. But Kobe Bryant in the 4th round at 133, cornerback out of Cincinnati. I mean, he's long. He fits that mold that Bulls and Jason Light value so much, which is just having that length. He's not going to blow you away with his athleticism, but he's savvy. He's smart. Could improve as a tackler, which fans hate to see DBs who can't support the run. But I think that's something he could, I don't know. Todd Bowles is going to make the man tackle, hopefully. But you're not going to find a perfect prospect at this point. We're talking the 4th round, like 133rd overall. So if you could grab a Kobe Bryant, that's a guy who could become a cornerback too in the NFL. Getting him in the 4th round, I think that's good value, and value is what we're looking for at this point of the draft. You guys have thoughts there? I see some affirming head nods at least, so that's a good sign.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question, because I think it's interesting you went DB 1st round and DB 4th round when there isn't an immediate need at the position. Do you think Kobe Bryant would just be your best player available at that point in the draft based on what you saw?
Exactly, 100%. I would have liked to take an edge rusher if we're going purely like by position. I'd like to add an edge in there as well to pair along with Matthew Butler. A little bit of provide some rotational support for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Shaq Barrett. If one of those guys goes down, the Bucs are in a tough spot. So adding an edge rusher is important. But I just think the value there was too much to ignore for best player available. And again, like I mentioned off the top, having all these guys as free agents, like there's a realistic scenario that Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting are gone after this season, and you're down to just Carlton Davis. And in this case, Dax Hill and Antoine Winfield Jr. So I don't, and again, let's think back to Jason Light's drafting history. He's not afraid to load up on positions he identifies as valuable and a position he either needs currently or will need in the future. The Buccaneers won a Super Bowl with every member of their starting member of their secondary on their rookie deals. That's important. It's allowed them to bring guys back, those affordable deals. So if he can, he's not going to be in that same situation, obviously, but he's had a good experience with finding players who are young in the secondary who are capable of performing or at least not hurting the team. So hopefully that answers your question. And then 2 picks in the 7th round. I mean, this could go any which way, but I picked Adam Anderson, edge rusher out of Georgia. I just talked about how I would have liked to have added an edge earlier if the right guy was there. I honestly don't know much at all about Adam Anderson. I'm pretty much taking him because he was playing on the best defense I've seen in maybe ever, a historically great defense. Jermaine Johnson transferred out of Jermaine Johnson II transferred out of Georgia to go to Florida State and become the Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick, one of my favorite prospects in the whole draft. This guy, maybe he's good too, right? He's just didn't have a chance to show it. So that's just me. That's just me having a little fun with it and addressing that position I mentioned. I think the Buccaneers could benefit from a little bit of depth. That who knows if he makes the team? Who knows how good he is? And then with my final pick, it's a guy I did an article, Bucs 7-round mock draft. Treston Ebner, an explosive running back out of Baylor. He's listed as a running back, but he really excels at catching the ball, and his greatest strength is his ability in the return game. Dynamic, explosive athlete, super experienced, back-to-back Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year. Tells you everything you need to know in terms of just how prolific he is in the return game, and all Bucs fans know just how important that is. And how that's been a weakness of the Buccaneers franchise for eternity. So,
yeah. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about either of those two players outside of what you just said, but I like what I heard. I'm on board.
Right on. There we go.
I mean, once you get into the 7th round, you're kind of just throwing darts at that point. So the rationale sounds good. The positions sound good. I love the special teams value and a pass catching running back. I mean, that just checks all the boxes right there for me.
And who knows? Maybe he ends up surprising some people and earning a reserve 3rd down back role. Maybe Gio Bernard gets hurt. Maybe Keyshawn Vaughn struggles. Like there's opportunities there. First, you got to make the team, that's for sure. And it gives a lot of legit competition for Jalen Darden, a player who I think was very disappointing to most Buccaneers fans this past season.
And potentially some real competition for Keyshawn Vaughn, who I think we can all agree has been disappointing in his time in Tampa Bay.
I think with Keyshawn Vaughn, I'm a little less critical of him. It's hard to, you got to get into a rhythm a little bit. And I think he started to show some signs towards the end of last season. So I'm going to slow my roll in terms of criticizing him as an individual. But yes, you're not wrong in stating that a lot of Buccaneers fans probably would have liked to see more from him. But they also probably would have taken what they've gotten from him if it meant they knew they were going to have Leonard Fournette being such a factor. And then you look at the deal he just signed for. It's like $7 million a year. Christian McCaffrey's going to be making $27 million a year this year.
It's definitely a good deal. Sorry about cutting out there. My internet was being a bit weird, so I just moved closer to the router, but we're good now.
It's doing the trick, Garrett.
Yes, sir.
Well, since we got you back, let's bounce it over to your mock, Garrett.
Yeah.
I got a little sneak preview of it, and I think we're going to see some similarities to Collin's here.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just go ahead and share the screen here so we can get it up. There we go. Perfect. So really similar positions to Collin's, just kind of like the different players. But the first round, as you can see, I took Lewis Cine out of Georgia. There's been a lot of buzz around him to the Bucs recently and of last couple days, last couple weeks, specifically from like sites like Pewter Report. And I think this is actually a pick that I could realistically see happen, even if a guy like Zion Johnson is still on the board. I think if Devante Wyatt is on the board, he'll be the pick. But if he's not there, I think Sign's that number 2 guy for the Bucs right now. And I honestly don't think I'd hate it. He's my safety 3 right behind Dax Hill, who is my 2. But I kind of see the Bucs looking for a guy they kind of view as a safety. I feel like I said earlier, I think Dax Hill could play safety, but right now he is a nickel. And I think the Bucs are going to want someone that could come in, play the back end. Keanu Neal's only on a 1-year deal. He can play that hard hitter, Jordan Whitehead kind of role. But I think he has a bit more than that. I think he can. He has a lot of range. There's some clips of him making some insane tackles, running all the way across the field. And I think this guy is a strong safety with the ability to be so much more. And I think he is much more right now. So
MVP of the national championship game.
Yep.
That's the kind of championship pedigree, that the Bucs brass are going to fall in love with, aside from all the traits you just mentioned. Makes a ton of sense. There's been a lot of talk about Lewis Cine. Like you said, the guys at Pewter Report, man, they're plugged in. Scott Reynolds is plugged in. So when they keep bringing up a name, it's something you need to pay attention to, because they've proven to have a lot of credibility when they do that. And he's definitely that name. So it would be silly to not consider him a serious option for the Bucs in round 1.
Yeah. JT, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me ask each of you a question.
Yeah.
Who would you prefer if you had to choose between the two? Daxton Hill or Lewis Cine?
Personally, Hill. Like I said, he's my safety 2, right behind Kyle Hamilton. So I think he's a better player, but they're close.
Yeah, I'm the same. For sure. And, like you said, like Bulls, they play with us. They'd like a strong safety. They'd like that Jordan Whitehead role. I mean, Whitehead was fantastic in it too. I'm going to miss Jordan Whitehead. I think a lot of Bucs fans are, but so, you need to kind of take yourself and your personal preference away. I like to have 2 guys who are a little more interchangeable, especially when I think Winfield's so versatile, right? Like effective in coverage. He can be that single high guy, or he could come up and support the run, use him to support the run game or blitz, from the defensive backfield. So personal preference only matters so much, but if you're asking about that, like for me, it's Dax Hill. You find a way to make it work.
Of course,
I would agree with that thought.
Versatility is such a big key part of the Bucs secondary, especially from their safeties. So guys like Dax Hill and Lewis Cine are definitely going to be high on their boards if I had to guess. But looking down to the next pick, I got addressing. So first of all, I do want to say the ideal pick here for me would have been Trey McBride, like Collin, but he went, I think, just before the Bucs, just a couple picks before in the PFF simulator. So I looked at the board and I saw Perrion Winfrey sitting right there at the top of the board, and I know the Bucs have talked with him. I know he visited. I know they talked with him at the Combine as well. And he's that kind of gap shooting defensive lineman that they're looking for right now. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love Jordan Davis and Travis Jones. I just don't think that's the mold of defensive lineman the Bucs are really looking for. That those guys more fit in that Vita Vea style, whereas Winfrey can come in and, like you were kind of talking about, fit in that Ndamukong Suh role, learn under William Golston and Suh if he does come back. Obviously, Winfrey's not the perfect prospect right now, but he's athletic, he's quick, and he knows how to get into the backfield. And from everything I've read and seen, that is kind of the player the Bucs want on their D-line.
Yeah, I think Perrion Winfrey, if he's there at 60, I think that would be an awfully tough player to pass over there. Like you said, lovely compliment to Vita Vea, right? Winfrey's more of a pass rusher. That's kind of his specialty. You talked about his quickness. It would make a ton of sense. I don't think he's going to be there, but I don't necessarily think McBride's going to be there either. You got to take who's on the board. So I really like what you did here, especially because you're able to, not trying to look ahead and spoil it, but your next pick seems to address that position. I'll leave it at that.
JT, anything?
I absolutely agree. I think, Collin, you mentioned how good Pewter Report is and how plugged in Scott Reynolds is. And lately they've been talking a lot about Logan Hall as a potential first-round option. I think Perrion Winfrey's better. So to get him here in the second round when a guy like Logan Hall could go first round, I've heard buzz from the Bucs, from the Bengals. If you can get a guy like Perrion Winfrey in the second round, that's the value pick of the draft for the Bucs. I could see them moving back into the second round, trading with a team like Seattle, who might come up for a quarterback, or the Jets, who might come up for a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, and getting Winfrey at the top of the second round with Bucs' first pick. So I think if you are able to grab him with pick 60, that's a home run kind of pick.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked to see him there. Every mock I've done, he's been gone like 10, 15 picks before. So I saw that there. McBride was gone. It was pretty much a no-brainer. But yeah, kind of moving on to this third pick. I don't think there's any other option I could have gone other than tight end. And I know there are 5 tight ends the Bucs like. It is McBride, Jelani Woods, who I picked, Dulcich from UCLA. Oh my goodness, Ruckert from Ohio State, and then I'm forgetting one. Who is it?
Cade Otton.
Cade Otton from Washington. Yes, those are the 5. And Jelani Woods was the last available, but even if he wasn't, I think I still would have picked him here. The upside with this guy is through the roof. This is a guy who scored a perfect 10 relative athletic score at the combine. He's relatively new to the position, so it might take him a couple more years to kind of mold into the player the Bucs want. But you still got Brait there who can do enough receiving. Hopefully Gronk comes back if they draft Jelani Woods to kind of fill that gap and let him develop for a year or two. But this is a player with sky-high upside who, if he can reach that potential, will be just the perfect kind of player that this position needs for this team for a long time.
Yeah, well said. Like, guys who are 6'7" shouldn't be able to move and run as fast as Jelani Woods can. Of course, I talked about the value of blocking. That's more of a question mark with him, but it doesn't mean it's not something he can do. Just like we've had Antonio Gates and players who were basketball players who ended up being serviceable enough blockers, but really made their mark on the league as a pass catcher. And if you can get a real weapon from that position who acts like another receiver when he's on the field, that's going to cause a lot of problems for the defensive coordinators that your team's playing. So I like it a lot. I think you explained it beautifully, Garrett.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against that kind of upside.
Yeah.
You look at his athletic testing. I mean, it's better than any tight end you could possibly name, better than Gronk, better than Travis Kelce. I mean, his ceiling is incredible. And I think he can contribute because I think he can come in and be a better blocker than Cam Brate, who is more of a reliable pass catcher. Just looking at his tools and athleticism, and he didn't showcase his blocking a ton this year at Virginia. But at his previous school before he transferred, he was more of a blocking tight end than anything, probably just because he hadn't learned so many of the skills. Like you said, he's learning the position. So I think if they can fine-tune his blocking and just work on that alone this year and kind of focus on the rest in the future, this could be a real help you now, help you later kind of pick.
The tools are there.
Oh, big time. And, getting to the later parts, the later you get, the more I'm willing to bank on tools. Third round still isn't late, but he scored a 10 on that's his athleticism. It's the best ever at the position. So you got to take a chance if it's there.
Yeah. Look what having those athletic scores can do for guys who are in the first round. And you may bring up a great point about you can take more of a gamble on the traits and the athletic physical profile the later you get in the draft. So the way that can impact a player's stock early in the top 10, like Trayvon Walker going 1 maybe, so you know what I mean? I think you bring up a great point. I really like it. I love these first 3 picks.
Yeah. When I saw him, I was like, man, I could actually see this happening. The one that's like kind of iffy is Winfrey, just because he might be gone by 60. But the next pick, I think, was the one that I was like, this is my pick. I really, really like Eric Ezukama from Texas Tech. PFF disagrees with me. They hate this pick. But I think this is a player. He led the Big 12 in receiving yards since 2019, was the most productive wide receiver on Texas A&M for his entire career. This guy's just an all-around stud. I think he's becoming a bit underrated. I think people aren't talking about him as much as I like him. But this guy's going to have a good NFL career. This is the perfect wide receiver 4 who can come in and fill different types of roles for you. So.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about him, to be perfectly frank. So, like, it's cool to hear about a guy who has that kind of potential. Like, I haven't watched his tape. I haven't broken it down. So I can't – I'm not going to sit up here and be one of those guys who pretends to know about a prospect when I don't. I think it's important to be clear when you don't. So, intriguing. You have my attention.
Yeah, man. He's a good player. If you get time, I'd suggest it to just kind of take a peek at him.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that similar boat. He's not got someone I've done a deep dive on. If memory serves me right, he's a little bit smaller, a little bit quicker, a little more shifty.
I don't think so. I think he's actually pretty big. I don't know his exact height.
So memory serves me wrong, so I know nothing.
Let me just double check. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. My computer.
It's funny, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so many names have gone through your mind, and faces, and numbers, and positions over these past however long your own due diligence process has taken place preparing for the NFL draft. It's kind of incredible how quickly you can just be like, I forget. Like, it's
it's tough. Like, the height, weight are two things that I don't think I'll ever be able to memorize for one certain prospect, unless it's like Jordan Davis, who's just a freak.
And that's something you can ballpark, like, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to know the measurables on Jordan Davis. He's huge.
Yeah, he's giant. So Ezukama's listed on the NFL Combine page at 6'2", 209. So he's plenty enough size to play receiver in the NFL. So
yeah, which definitely matters to the Bucs for their profile. They're typically bigger, more athletic type of wide receiver they go for. So whether it's you liking them or projecting Jason Light will like them, that pick makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I definitely like him. So I would very much appreciate if Jason Light liked him as well. So the next one is a bit of a interesting one. I don't think a lot of people are. I've seen very few people talk about this guy. Obviously, a Connecticut tackle is not going to get a ton of love. But this is a guy who didn't get a combine invite. But when everyone was at their pro day, obviously you're going to have oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Defensive tackle.
Travis Jones.
Thank you. I was thinking Tyler Smith for some reason, the Tulsa tackle. But Travis Jones, everyone was there to see him. I saw multiple people come away and say Ryan Vandemark was the guy getting all the looks at pro day. Everyone said he was super impressive. I'm trying to find his RAS. It was like somewhere between 9.5 and 10, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 9.61. Ran a 4.50 shuttle. Ran a 7.5 3-cone. 5.15 40 with a 1.75 10-yard split. This is just a freak athlete at the tackle position. He is 6'6", 310 pounds. This is like, if you're in the 7th round and you get this kind of athlete with this kind of like raw athletic skill that you can maybe mold into the player that you want, I couldn't think of a better depth piece. I don't really like the Bucs tackle depth right now. I think it's pretty lacking. I'm pretty sure they brought back Josh Wells, but that didn't really go too well when Tristan Wirfs got hurt last year. And besides that, I cannot remember who we have. So I would be all for getting a depth tackle in the 7th round.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the whole best player available thing is real, like you said, especially the further you get. They brought over Fred Johnson.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of the tackle position. They got a guy named Jonathan Hubbard on the depth chart, but nothing of note beyond what you mentioned. They got a guy, Sedarius Hutcherson, who was I believe he was an undrafted free agent they signed last year.
Are they putting him in tackle?
No, he's a guard, but he's got
Okay.
he's probably a guard, but he's definitely got some flexibility to him, and they like to cross train their linemen.
I did like Hutcherson last year.
Yeah, I think it was great value. Jason Light's really good at finding guys as undrafted free agents, so definitely. That's like a whole nother draft that starts right away, right? So competition. But no, really interesting. Sounds like a good old Dutch boy, Ryan Vandemark, just like my last name is of Dutch heritage. But yeah, man, I like what you're saying there. Those are wild athletic scores for a guy to be available at this point. Why wouldn't you take a shot on someone like that? And you're totally also bang on when you say that tackle depth. This is a perfect time to address something like that as well.
Yeah. JT, anything?
Yep. Bet on traits. I mean,
bet on traits.
You're throwing darts at this point in the draft. Take a big swing if you're going to take a swing.
Mm-hmm. So the next pick I got, another guy I don't think a lot of people are going to know. His name's Nick Ford, a center from Utah. Obviously, the Bucs had some interior offensive line losses this offseason, but we also had some pretty big gains and retentions, namely Ryan Jensen staying for center. I'm just kind of looking at – I know we drafted Robert Hainsey. I know we kept Stinney. At some point, are we going to have to move Hainsey to guard? I'm pretty sure they were planning on playing him at center if they lost Ryan Jensen, and now that Jensen's back, maybe they can switch him to guard, and Nick Ford can kind of slide in behind Jensen to be a backup. This guy plays bully ball. He's really, really strong. There are many, many occasions on his tape when he's just throwing people away, like off of him, pushing them to the ground. Similar player to Ryan Jensen, obviously not going to be as good, but from a 7th-round pick, just kind of find a guy that fits your mold. I couldn't find his athletic testing, unfortunately, but this is a guy that fits what the Bucs like at center. So,
just a little Ryan Jensen appreciation as you're talking about like drafting a center who fits his mold, and then I'm just like, we got him for another 3 years potentially. Like, damn, the blessings of Tom Brady. He says he was already coming back or whatever, but man, I'm excited that as unfortunate as Ali Marpet's retirement is for us, not for him. I'm happy for the guy. Boy, have the Buccaneers done a good job, man. Like for Bucs fans, anyone who covers the team, things were looking dire for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, guys start coming back, and then you steal Shaq Mason. I mean, just a lovely situation to be in, which shouldn't preclude them for potentially drafting two offensive linemen with their last 2 picks if they want to throw a couple darts out there and see if one of them, hits somewhere on the board at least, or maybe is a bullseye.
Yeah. And one thing I really like about Nick Ford, because with transparency, he's someone you'll see in my mock draft here momentarily. He played every position along the Utah offensive line. Left tackle, right tackle, center, both guards. So if you're talking about versatility, the Bucs love to cross-train their linemen. He's coming with that versatility already in hand. So with all those things you mentioned and all that experience at the college level playing for a Power 5 program, I'll take that in the 7th round any day.
Yeah, I do wish I could have addressed corner at some point in this mock, but I don't really a 7th-round corner is going to be so hard to hit. So if they're not selecting one in the first 4 rounds, I feel like they probably won't select one.
You only got 6 picks to work with, man. Nothing wrong with that. That's how the board fell.
Exactly. All right, let me take off my mock. There we go. JT. Oh, some overlap.
Yeah, you guys have left me very little to talk about. So I started off with Daxton Hill, and I find it interesting that we all went safety with our first pick. I think, Garrett, your pick of Lewis Cine is probably more accurate for the Bucs are leaning right now based on all indications. But if Daxton Hill is there, I think he's a better pick for all the reasons we talked about. His versatility. He's good in the box. He's a good tackler. He's a good blitzer. There are so many things he does well. He's so much like Antoine Winfield Jr. in that way. You could play him as a 2 high. You can play him on the blitz. You can play him in the box. He does everything well. And he played a little more high safety in prior years to this one. under Don Brown when he was Michigan's defensive coordinator. So he has experience doing some of everything, and he's really a jack of all trades, and he's good at everything.
Yeah, I mean, I just echo everything I said with Collin. Stud.
Cosign.
Next pick of overlap, Perion Winfrey. Like I said, I could see him being the Bucs' first pick off the board. To get him at 60 would be a dream come true. I love the way he has shown all the traits you want from a three-tech defensive tackle while never really playing three-tech defensive tackle. He wasn't great against the run at Oklahoma, but he was playing as a 290-pound nose tackle. So there's some projection there. There's some things he needs to clean up. If we can get Ndamukong Suh back this year and rotate him in as that pass rusher, I think his long-term projection is very good. And I think he can make an immediate impact as a rotation player. Plus, I mean, the last defensive tackle we took from Oklahoma turned out okay, so I feel good about this one.
Yeah, give him the JTS treatment for a year. Just kind of let him learn, and then give him that full-time role the next year.
Yeah, I like it for sure, man. And I always appreciate a Joe McCoy reference.
One of the most underappreciated Bucs of my lifetime.
Yeah, man. People just like shit on the dude because he's happy and a good guy. like it's honestly ridiculous. People who try to find ways to like, what a terrible guy to try to hate on or throw slander at. Like, man, what's not his fault? This is football, right? You got 22 starters. Like you can't expect him to single-handedly as a defensive tackle win the team games. You got to build a team around him. And I think, and I've gotten into it on Twitter before with people because of the whole narrative about people. He didn't want to win. He was always smiling, having a good time. You ever seen Tristan Wirfs? Have you ever understood how he interacts with his teammates? He's not this like angry, mean dude. He's a happy guy out there. But his play does the talking, and Joe McCoy was the same way.
Yeah, you can play violent positions without actually being a violent person.
Exactly.
Still be good.
Heaven forbid we have fun while playing a game out there. Especially doing it at such a high level. Perennial Pro Bowler, potential Hall of Famer. Just think of what he could have been if he frowned more.
Yeah.
Third round pick, I also went with Jelani Woods for the athleticism, some potential blocking ability, the high upside. I won't echo all those points we've already touched on. I will say that Sean Ryan was on the board, and if he's actually there in the third round, he would be my pick. I have no reason to believe he'll be there in the third round because I think he's a top 20 player for me. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl guard. But if he's there in the third round, I sprint that card to the podium. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I had Natalie Miller of the Draft Wire in USA Today on the Bucs Banter podcast a week or so ago, and she had him going in the first round.
Yeah, he's just
rehand. So why wouldn't you take him? But he's obviously you went money, but I'm just saying the fact, like, it's almost good you didn't because it's so unrealistic.
Yeah, that's why I didn't. I couldn't in good conscience. It felt like I was cheating taking one of my top 20 players in the third round. It just felt unreal. My first original pick, not copying someone else in this, Brian Robinson Jr., running back out of Alabama. And he's someone who the Bucs have brought in for an interview. He's not the pass-catching, third down kind of ride back like a Giovanni Bernard is, but he's a good pass catcher. He's a good blocker. He does those things well. And if you want that third down guy, great. You might be able to get him in the 7th round. There are going to be options available. But what if Leonard Fournette gets hurt? Who's going to pick up that slack? Probably not Gio Bernard, an aging running back who's more of a pass catcher. Maybe Keyshawn Vaughn, a guy who I wasn't high on coming out of the draft process and has been inconsistent at best. I think Brian Robinson is someone who can really carry the load if something happens to Fournette. You get that blocking, you get that pass catching ability, and you get a legitimate option if there's an injury or long term. If we cut Leonard Fournette after next year, I don't think he has a lot of dead money after that. So this could be kind of a transitional option moving forward.
Yeah, it's great value. Makes a lot of sense for the reasons you just said, for sure. So I totally could see the Buccaneers adding some running back competition into the room for someone like Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, I think it all just depends on how the board falls. I'm all for drafting a running back, but if there's someone else on the board, I'm going to opt for them because I think you can find good running back talent even later than this. But I definitely wouldn't mind it if the board, especially after if the first 3 rounds were to go like that. I don't think I could be upset with this draft personally. So.
All right, moving down to the 7th round, I also picked Nick Ford out of Utah for all the reasons you touched on, Garrett, and his versatility. Just that's a depth player. You have to keep one less backup tackle, maybe one less backup center. Gives you options, flexibility. Yeah. I like that. If you're only carrying 7, maybe 8 offensive linemen, I want a guy who can play multiple positions.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, sounds like this guy's got the right mentality to suit the tools that he's got and the versatility along the line too. So I like it.
Yeah, everything he said plus what I said last time.
And my final pick is
this one.
Marquand McCall, big old nose tackle out of Kentucky.
Huge.
Shout out to Oak Park, Michigan, graduate there. Always happy to represent Michigan roots. But he's a guy who popped for me at the Shrine Bowl. Just his massive size. I've seen him listed anywhere between 340 and in some places in the 370s. The dude is giant. And for his size, he's surprisingly light on his feet. He's fluid. He moves fairly well for a massive human. Is he a great player? No, not by any means. I think this is a potential depth option behind Vita Vea. And Vita Vea has something that can't be emulated, and that's incredible size and strength. McCall has that kind of size, not that kind of strength, but if you can harness him, you can develop him, he might be a legitimate backup there.
A little bit of insurance for the big fella, man. Makes sense. Nothing wrong with that. Can't assume Vita Vea is invincible just because he looks like he is.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think this is a guy who's going to – we didn't really touch on it, but the Bucs signed Deidrin Senat a couple days ago. That's just another depth piece on that D-line. He's not really going to compete for a ton of snaps. McCall could come in and do that for right behind Vita Vea. So.
All right. So it looks like we're all fairly like-minded in a lot of our picks. Obviously, a lot of crossover. Seemed like we were mostly in agreement. There wasn't any one pick that stood out as like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I definitely think I think us and probably most Bucs fans would agree on the direction of the first 3 picks. It needs to be that in some order, in my opinion. Obviously, there are other things you could do, but I think if that were to happen, it'd be a good draft.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's pretty clear the positions that we view as highest priority. And I think there's lots of crossover in terms of what players we think are good value in their own right. And when positional need happens to meet a player you're fond of, that's just naturally who you're going to slot in there. So it seems like we're on the same page with a lot of that. And yeah, I think it showed with how we conducted ourselves in our respective mock drafts.
So the mock draft, it's a lot of projection of what we like, but more so what we think the Bucs will do in a lot of ways. Let me move on to what we're going to talk about next. I want to touch on who you guys like for the Bucs at pick 27. Your personal top 5. If you're making your big board, what you would do as GM, what direction would you go? So let's see. Collin, let me bounce it over to you. Who are your top 5 dream scenarios for the Bucs? And realistically, I mean, it's not like Kayvon Thibodeau will fall.
Right, yeah. So guys who actually have a legitimate chance to be there at 27 potentially. I'll rhyme them off for you, and then you can maybe ask me if you'd like me to elaborate on any of them. Andrew Booth Jr., cornerback out of Clemson. Daxton Hill, we've talked about him more than enough. Devante Wyatt, of course, defensive tackle from Georgia. Zion Johnson, guard from Boston College. And Jalen Petrie, a safety from Baylor.
Ooh, the Petrie one. Speak on that a bit.
Yeah, I will. And I was very tempted to have a Chris Olave on there. I don't think he will be there. There is a situation where he could be. I love Olave, but I decided to kind of keep it with a little bit even more realistic. Wasn't going to let myself stretch it out. Petrie, I think, is kind of like a poor man's Daxton Hill in some ways. Like that word, the big V word, versatility is key. I like how he can support the run and blitz. Like he's got a lot of honey badger to him. And I really like the kid. I think he's a hell of a player. He helped himself at the Senior Bowl. You're not hearing many legitimate complaints about him from anyone who spent the time to actually give him a fair shake. And I believe his name belongs in consideration. So of course, for Jalen Petrie, I would hope the Bucs would move back and grab him at the start of the second, maybe grab an extra fourth or whatever it is, if that was their guy. But he's just a name that I think is worth mentioning for a lot of this, almost all the same reasons mentioning Daxton Hill, just a little lighter version.
Yeah, I mean, I think Petrie's good. I think I still have Lewis Sign above him, just in plain safety rankings. But no denying that he's a good player. I definitely am all aboard if they decide to maybe trade back, like you said, pick up an extra pick in day 3. I love that idea.
And I think I'm unveiling my own philosophy, which I've said clearly as well, which is not to say that Lewis Cine can't be, he's just exclusively a strong safety. I think you addressed that pretty well. But there's something about that super versatile, super quick. Like, I don't know. I just like it. I like how he moves. I like how he plays. I like his mentality, all that stuff. So he's just one of those guys for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like Petrie a lot. He's a guy, you compare him to Daxton Hill. I compare him to Jeremiah Wosu-Koromoa from last year's draft. Just a guy who is 99% going to be in the nickel. And whether he's a linebacker or a safety, I don't care. He's a nickel. He can cover, he can run, he can tackle. He's got all the skills I want for that position.
Yeah, and that position's a huge need, and you need to draft for a nickel cornerback specifically this day and age anyway. It's such an important position with the way that slot receivers are utilized. Look what the Buccaneers do with Chris Godwin. I mean, you're talking about one of the best players in the league at his position, and they've bumped him inside, right? They used to be able to take advantage of, ultimately the guy, the odd man out from playing outside corner, the third best corner on your team. They would just shuffle him into the nickel. I feel like that's what's happened with Sean Murphy-Bunting, not trying to pile on SMB, and I know he's from Michigan, right? So maybe there's some
not just Michigan, Central Michigan,
yeah,
the best of all the Michigan schools.
Got you. So yeah, I think exactly what you just said, man. A valuable nickel, right? That's what Daxton Hill or Jalen Petrie could bring. Zion Johnson, I just think, like, as much as it's starting to feel like the Buccaneers are not gonna draft a guard, I think Aaron Stinnie deserves a chance, and I think they believe he deserves a chance. And then they obviously have depth there. They could handle it by committee. I think they have other needs they'll likely address, but I think Zion Johnson's talent deserves to be mentioned in my mock draft, which will be published on si.com/NFL/Buccaneers tomorrow morning, most likely. I have Zion Johnson going to the Chargers at, what do they pick, like 17 or something like that?
Yeah.
17. So, like, I just really like the player a lot. I think he's like the definition of plug and play. Devante Wyatt, like, we haven't really touched on him, but I feel like anyone who's watching this or listening to this podcast is well aware of what Devante Wyatt could bring to the Buccaneers. It's one of those things I've kind of, this whole process, just not wanted to talk about it. Hoped it would happen. And it felt too good to be true and not really possible. But as we're getting closer, I'm just seeing absolutely a legitimate path that Devante Wyatt could be there at 27, way more so than even 2 weeks ago. So as I've just really, like, conducting my own mock draft, going through doing my due diligence there. So, Andrew,
let me ask you a follow-up question on Wyatt real quick.
Yeah.
Does the fact that he's older, 24, I believe he is, and he only produced 2.5 sacks last year, does that scare you at all away from him?
No, I would love him to be 22, just because you feel like it's that much more upside. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm thinking back, I'm 35, 34. I sometimes forget my own age. And the difference between me when I was 22 and 24 was pretty minimal. And I think if you take care of your body, and you do a good job, it's not going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things, let alone think of the age most guys finish their rookie deals at. If you want to re-sign them and bring them back, that means they're doing damn well. And if not, they wouldn't have been there anyway. So I really don't think too much about that. I think maybe that could lead to like certain forms of maturity. Not sure that's the case with Devante Wyatt, but I'm not too worried about that. In terms of the sack production, I think the way that Kirby Smart employed schematically his team, I just think it's kind of hard to read too much into individual stats. I think Trayvon Walker's ascension is proof of that. The way that people defend Trayvon Walker's lack of production from a sack perspective could be applied to Devante Wyatt as well. They have very strict roles, and they're not necessarily trying to have one guy go off. They're trying to really keep everything in front of them. And not to say he was not trying to get the quarterback, but you know what I'm saying. So that's kind of how I would attack that defense of that question.
Fair enough.
Yeah, good answers.
And then
I love
Andrew.
Go ahead. I love Andrew Booth. I love that you put him on that list.
Man, he's good, man.
He's so good.
He's just not getting talked about much, right? Like outside of Stingley and Gardner, you hear a lot of McDuffie, and then it's like people skip right to Kyrie Elam or Kyler Gordon at the end, and it's like Booth. It's like not talked about enough. I think he's a fantastic prospect. I think he could be really good. If he's there, I take him over any of those other guys.
Yeah, he's a stud, no doubt about it. I love Andrew Booth.
Yeah, I know. For me personally, I think he's better than Sauce Gardner. I think it's him and Stingley at the top for me. And I've heard people talk about he has an injury red flag from the combine, so I think that might be part of his potential slip. But in terms of talent and what he showed on the field, he's a top 10 prospect.
Wow, high praise. I like it.
Like you said, dude's good.
Yeah, he is
Dude is good. Yeah. Okay, is it my turn now?
Yeah, what you got, Garrett?
All right, so I think number one is going to be Devante Wyatt for me. I think he's the number one guy I'd want. Number two is going to be Zion Johnson. Number three is going to be Dax Hill. Number four, where's my list? Number four is going to be, I have to get a bit greedy here and say Treylon Burks. And then number five is going to be my guy, Kyrie Elam. But before I head into my descriptions, explanations, Collin is going to have to head out. So I think we are going to part with him here. Collin, we loved having you on, man. Great talk. Hopefully we could do it again sometime because we both love the work you do and really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate the support, and right back at you guys. Keep doing your thing. And not too much longer till we get to see what finally happens. And I think it'll be a bit of a relief for people like us who have spent so much time pouring over these prospects and the various scenarios. I'm like ready, like years previous.
Oh, yeah.
With my mock draft, I'd wait till like Wednesday evening, try and catch like the last opportunities to get some inside info. This year, I'm like, man, screw it. Take it, publish it. It's my last one. I'm done, So, but yeah, thanks a lot. And go Bucs.
Go Bucs.
All right. He is Collin Haalboom. Follow him at Bucs Banter on Twitter. Follow his written work at Bucs Game Day for Sports Illustrated.
All right. Back to my list. Who did I say again? Number one, Devante Wyatt. Pretty much all the reasons Collin said. Number two, Zion Johnson. I'll just echo everything he said. I think he's a plug-and-play starter day one. Number three, I said Dax Hill for all the reasons we said earlier. Chess piece, can play whatever position you want him to. Number four, I got a bit greedy, said Treylon Burks. I think he's the best receiver in the draft. I don't think he'll fall to us, but there is a chance. So I put him on there. I know the Bucs have interest. For some reason, they want a receiver. They were looking at receiver in the first round. I wouldn't do it, but the board fell a certain way, and Burks was sitting there. I don't think I could pass up on him. Dude's a stud. And then number five is one of my favorite players in the draft, who I think is incredibly underrated. My guy Kyrie Elam from University of Florida. So
I think the Burks one is interesting. You said he's your top wide receiver in the draft.
Yeah.
And he's such a chess piece, and he's so fun to watch. And I know this staff could do so many different things with him, and they could get so much production out of him, even in this offense where there's already three receivers ahead of him.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think he'll be there.
I don't either. I think his floor is 22 to the Packers.
22. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is a chance. Who knows? Things could happen. But Yeah, I would love him in Tampa Bay. At the end of the day, I don't think it happens, but I had to put him on that list. So.
And then Kyer Elam. I know we were just talking about Derek Stingley, Sauce Gardner, and then Andrew Booth. Where does Kyer Elam rank amongst those guys for you? Is he in that conversation, or is he a tier below?
So for me, it is Derek's. I have Andrew Booth as my CB1, Derek Stingley as my 2, and then I have Elam as my 3. Actually, I have him above Sauce Gardner. I would have included Booth, but I don't think the Bucs are really going to target him. I don't think he fits their mold of cornerback. And I think Kyer Elam is Carlton Davis plus. Like I say plus because I think he's more athletic. I think he's faster. He's a bigger guy, and I think he has some really nice fluid hips, more so than Carlton Davis. I also think he has some better ball skills than Carlton Davis. His interception totals aren't the craziest, but I've seen the guy make some insane plays on the ball over his course of time at UF. So,
yeah, definitely faster than Carlton Davis. He ran a 4.39 at the combine.
Yeah, something like 4.37 to 4.4. I think it was definitely in the 4.3s. So,
and for a guy who's 6'2", 200 plus, that's flying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'd be the fastest cornerback on the roster
by far.
I know Jamel Dean ran fast.
Oh no, Jamel Dean's faster.
I don't remember what he ran, but I know he was fast.
Jamel Dean was really fast.
But that's definitely the Bucs prototype. Big, physical, fast. And he is really, in a lot of ways, a lockdown corner. I'm agreeing with you. I think he is the third best corner in this draft. I wish he was a little bit of a better tackler, especially with his size. But in terms of coverage ability, he is right up there in that top tier.
Yeah, tackling is definitely the gripe that I would have with them also. But I just can't. I know John Ledyard and Dane Brugler have also said it, but the Carlton Davis comparison is right there. I just can't get it out of my head. In terms of Jamel Dean, he ran a 4.3 flat. So he's fast. Jamel Dean was flying.
Dang.
That's my 5. How about you?
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, thanks, man.
My 5, a little bit different. Number 1, Travis Jones. I know we talked about him a little bit last week.
I knew it.
Number 2 was Daxton Hill for all the reasons we mentioned. 3 was Devante Wyatt. 4 was Zion Johnson. And 5 is Perion Winfrey, who we both talked about in our mock.
Hey, I like it. But I like I said last week, Jones, great player. I don't know if I'd like him on the Bucs just because of what we talked about. But
I don't think the Bucs will like him on the Bucs, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because when I watch him, I see so much of Linval Joseph, made his name with the Vikings as a nose tackle. But Travis Jones is so much more athletic than Linval Joseph was coming out of college.
He is very athletic.
And Joseph came out of, I think, Eastern Carolina, smaller tier school, just like Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But Jones is so big and strong. He's an instant, maybe even an upgrade over Sue as a run defender. And that's saying a lot because Sue was very good.
Yeah.
But Jones is very, very good coming out of college. And
yeah,
I don't think he's a great pass rusher day one, but I think he's a good pass rusher day one with attention going to Vita Vea and attention going to Joe Tryon, Shaq Barrett. Getting those one-on-one matchups, I think, will really benefit him. And yeah, maybe he's only a 4 or 5 sack guy. But when you talk about pressure coming from every angle, versatility, you can move him from the 3 if you want to go Vita Vea on the bench, which Don Bull seems to like to do a lot, unfortunately, on third down. He can give you a little more pass rush from the interior. I think his skill set is really, really good for this team. I do think there's some projection to it. I just don't think the Bucs are into it.
Yeah, it's too similar to what Vita Vea does. Like you said, there is pass rush upside, but I don't think it's enough. How this team operates is so oriented on the defensive line being able to get pressure and the linebackers coming through. They need someone who can shoot through the gap that Vita Vea creates. And while Jones is athletic, they just need a smaller guy, I think, that can fill that role that Sue will eventually leave.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I think he could shoot that gap so well if that was his responsibility and it wasn't at UConn where he was the nose tackle. He was taking on double teams, triple teams a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put him in that gap shooting scenario with his traits, with his skill set, I think he would thrive there. I just don't think the Bucs want to project that. I think they want more of a plug and play, what you're getting kind of guy.
I'd agree with you. In a team definitely in win now mode, they're not trying to develop a guy who's probably going to get a lot of snaps next year. So,
but a lot of similar names, a lot of Devante Wyatt, a lot of Zion Johnson, a lot of Dax Hill.
Yeah,
I think if any of those three guys are the pick, I think you, me, and I'll speak for Collin, I think we'd all be pretty happy if that was the pick at 27.
Very, very happy. Yep.
A name none of us, I don't think, mentioned in our top 5 was Lewis Cine.
He'd be 6 for me.
Yeah, I think he'd be 6 for me too. I think he was obviously your pick in your mock draft, but I think he is not my ideal pick by any means. Obviously, I have 5 guys above him. I think he fits what the Bucs look for in their first round picks, with Jason Licht's history of targeting athletic players, with what Todd Bowles likes at safety, with his production at Georgia. I think he's a natural fit for what the Bucs are going to be looking for. I wouldn't be mad at the pick, but he wouldn't be a home run for me.
He'd be 6 for me, but there are guys in there like Treylon Burks, Zion Johnson, and who I think are both going to be gone. And then you got Devante Wyatt, who I think there's a real possibility he is gone. And then I don't think they're going to pick Elam. I don't think they're going to pick a corner around one. If they pick DB, it's going to be safety. But I think Cine's really good. Like he's 6 by a very, very small margin. Like I think this guy's, like I was saying, he's a strong safety, but it can be so much more. Like I was saying Elam is Carlton Davis plus. Cine, don't know how to say his
It's probably Cine. I'm probably saying it wrong.
Yeah, Cine is Jordan Whitehead plus. Like he gives you the stuff that Jordan Whitehead couldn't do. So
yeah, I think in terms of talking over the top and coverage ability and frankly mobility in general, he's a much more agile, athletic player.
His range is insane. It's very good.
What did he run at the combine? I think it was like a 3.7. He ran fast, I think.
Let me pull it up. He was definitely fast, though. I know that.
Yeah,
so he ran a 4.37. So,
nailed it.
Yeah, that's plenty.
But yeah, you look at a guy like Devin White and his sideline to sideline ability and what he brings from just hunting people down. Cine brings that same kind of aspect.
Yeah. So that wraps up our top 5s. I think we have one more little player we're going to drop in here. JT, who is your doomsday scenario for the Bucs?
I'm not a glass half empty kind of guy, but I feel like there are so many ways where I can be underwhelmed by this Bucs draft.
Me too.
With players that I like you guys talked about Trey McBride possibly at 27. I think that's a possibility. I'd just be super underwhelmed by it. But in terms of my doomsday scenario, I think it would be Logan Hall. And it seems like the closer we get to the draft, the more steam he's getting connected to the Bucs. And I just don't see not even a first round player. I don't think he's a top 50 player for me. And I mean, he just breaks the Bucs mold. He's athletic, yes, which the Bucs will like, but he's 6'6", 282, I think he measured at the combine.
Yeah, he's not big.
He's so lean, and he is not strong at the point of attack, and he has short arms. Yeah. That is not a combination I want for my defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. It feels like he's more athlete than pass rusher right now.
I'm going to be transparent. That was my name too. This is not a guy. Like if we're at 60, maybe. I still don't really want maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But I think there will be better options there then.
Like if Trey McBride is there and they pick Logan Hall, I'm pissed. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, but if there'd have to be a good few names off the board at 60 for me to be okay with Logan Hall. But he's just not good right now. Mm-hmm. Like, sorry to say it, but I don't think he's very good right now. I think this is kind of a similar situation to who did the Eagles pick last year? Like third round. It was that video of Howie Roseman going around to give the scouts a fist bump, and that guy was like, "No, I don't want it."
I remember the video more than the player.
Yeah, I cannot remember, but it was oh my goodness, Phil. But I gotta find this. I think it's a very similar situation to that. Eagles 2021 draft. Milton Williams. Who
the hell is Milton Williams?
Yeah, Milton Williams. He went to, I think, Louisiana Tech. Crazy athlete, didn't know what to do. And I think that's a really similar situation to Logan Hall.
Yeah, and he is a really good athlete. I think he had a 9.8 RAS. So
Yeah.
I mean, the Bucs prioritize athletic ability in the first round. We've talked about that in the past, but I mean, at a certain point, you got to be able to play football.
Yeah, I really hope there needs to be like a chain of things to happen for Logan Hall to be the pick. And one of those things, their first pick, and one of them I hope would be a trade down.
Yeah, if they just straight up take him at 27, that's going to be real hard to swallow.
I would not be happy.
And I think it's important we get this out there now because we don't want to look back in retrospect and say, this was a good pick, this was a bad pick. We want all our feelings out there up front so we can look back and say, I thought this was a great pick a week ago. It's a great pick now. This isn't jumping on a bandwagon, or this isn't throwing shade or being a hater. This is, I don't think this is a good fit for our team. I don't think this is a great player. And if we take him, it's going to be a disappointment. Not when we take him. Didn't like, University of Houston. I know there's Florida State. They always kind of go that way. Oh, you don't like Kyle Trask because he went to Florida. Sometimes you just don't like a player.
Yeah, that's for me at least. That's always what it is. I'm never going to dislike a guy because of their school. It's always going to be, if I dislike you, it's because I don't think you're good. So.
All right. With that said, we are 3 days until draft day. Any final thoughts before we wrap this podcast up? We cross our fingers and we pray for the best.
I'm excited, man. Draft, like I've said many times before, is always the most fun time of year for me if we're not in the Super Bowl. So I can't wait. I'll be my Twitter at NFL Ballard. I might start putting it in here like Collin did. That's pretty smart. But I'll be tweeting my reactions of just not the Bucs pick, just the entire first round, really. If there's any, I'm a Bucs guy first, but I got my start in like football coverage in the draft, so it's always going to be my first love. So yeah.
Yep, same for me. I'm gonna have my final mock draft out and probably on Thursday because the deadline is Wednesday night, so I got to get that put together. I've probably deleted 10 copies today at work. But yeah, follow Garrett for the entire draft coverage. You can follow me at Icewater Olson. We will be back next week to recap the Bucs draft, the good, the bad, and ugly. Hopefully more good than not.
Hopefully no ugly. I'll take some bad. I will be very mad if there's ugly, but yeah.
If the worst thing we're talking about is drafting a kicker or a punter in the 7th round, I'll be a happy man.
I'd take Matt Arise in the 5th. I said it. I said it. The punter from San Diego State, dude's insane. Opinion's gotta go.
I think he has no guaranteed money, so he could be on the way out.
All right.
All right. With that said, we will catch y'all next week here on the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast. Struggling here at the end. Until then, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.